Hi Rhiannon, hi Kyle, hi Meeples. This month we're talking about role-playing games, and to be honest I didn't quite know where to go with this for a couple of reasons. First of all, I consider myself relatively new to role-playing, even though I've been following it since I was a child. I never actually got to play as a child, as I've said many times before, and I didn't actually get to play in an actual role-playing game until about 3 years ago, I think was the first time. Rhiannon and I are in the middle of a Pathfinder online campaign with some various other board game media people, and that can be seen on Lance Meixter, the Undead Vikings video channel. It's called Boom Quest. Based on that, I thought the best thing would be to talk about some role-playing games that I have played, and some that I think are slightly different and slightly and therefore quite interesting because people might not have come across them. Now, one thing I will caveat here is I'm recording this before the other guys have recorded their videos, so there's a chance that they might talk about some of these games. With that in mind, the first game I wanted to talk about was a full-on role-playing game, and that is the Fate Core system. This is published by Evil Hat Games, and it's actually Evil Hat Productions, and it's actually open source, so you can go online and find the rules. You don't have to buy the core book here and the various other books that are with it. In fact, this is the main book, and it's available online, I believe, and you can use the rules within this to create your own scenarios. This is very much a generic rule book, and you are able, within the rights of the system, to create your own universe which uses those rules. The other thing worth noting about Fate Core is that they've created a thing called Fate Accelerated, which is I think it's a $5 download or something like that, and it's very much a smaller book, and very accessible for youngsters. It simplifies a lot of the rules down to their very core basic ideas. Fate uses fudge dice, and fudge dice are six-sided dice. On two sides there are pluses, on two sides there are nothing, and on two sides there are minuses. In Fate Core, when you're playing the game, you can basically do anything, and you succeed at doing anything. What you're doing though is every time you do that, you'll roll 4 of these dice and add up the pluses and minuses to get an overall balance, either plus or minus, of how well you do something. So they have this thing called the ladder here, and this is a ladder of how well you perform the action. So you combine your 4 die rolls total with whatever you have in your skills. So here is an example of a character sheet, and you have various skills here which you adjust accordingly at the start of the game, and then you can level up and level down during the game. So you can have a skill which is superb, great, good, fair or average, and they will be +1 through +5 onto those dice rolls. The other thing that Fate Core does is very story orientated. There is a GM in it running the game, but the character-wise you have these things called aspects, and you have a high concept and you have a trouble. You earn fate points. They'll let you adjust die rolls and things like that, and you can use fate points to invoke an aspect, so make you do something even better and adjust your die roll. Because you invoke it, you spend it, then it's gone. But at the same time, the GM can compel you, which will give you some fate points back. So very briefly, that's Fate. I highly recommend it, especially if you want a very generic thing where you can set the universe as you wish. Really good, really interesting. Loads of downloadable stuff available online, both on DriveThruRPG, on Evil Hat Productions website. The second one I wanted to talk about was Fiasco. Fiasco, again, and that's a common theme you'll see through these things, is very much narrative-based role-playing. Now, one of the good things about Fiasco is that it's for 3 to 5 players. It can be played in about 2 to 3 hours, and you don't need a GM as such. You need somebody who maybe has run it before so they can set things up, but then they can actually get in and be a part of the story with you. And again, much like Fate, where this is a generic setting, there is no theme to it. You can download various and get various scenarios which you can play out, and what's great is that for each, the scenarios are called playsets, so for each one there is a little bit of text about it and where it's set and stuff like that, And then you have these dice tables, and again you're going to be rolling pools of dice, and based on that you set up various characters' needs and relationships. So in Act 1 you act out some scenes, and when half the dice are remaining, you'll be drafting the dice based on what you want to do scene-wise. When half the dice are left, the Act 1 will end, and then you'll go to the tilt, and in the tilt that's when something drastic will happen to shake up the entire story. And then you act out scene 2, and once scene 2 is done you'll be again drafting the die, and finally you'll get to a kind of conclusion where you will work out through the various dice that you've drafted and through the dice that you've got remaining, you'll work out a conclusion to the story. So basically you have the setup, you play scenes, you have Act 1, you do the tilt, you have Act 2, and then you have the aftermath. And that's basically what it's about. It's a great little game for 3 to 5 players, lasts 2 to 3 hours, so you can play it in one session, and no GM is particularly required, although if somebody has experience with it, that's great. So that was Fiasco and Fate. The last one I want to talk about is another game which again can be played in one setting, and again is totally GM-less, so you don't need anybody running it. It's handy again if somebody's played it before, because they can just help lead in and explain things, but it's not necessary. In fact, the first time I played it as a 2-player game, and it can play from 2 to 4, and it lasts from about 2 to 4 hours, so a great evening's entertainment. This one feels more like a social experiment. It's called The Quiet here and is independently published. You take it in turns around the board to basically make a camp, and it could be in any surrounding, it's totally up to you to decide. And then what you do is you have a deck of cards, and you can get, if you buy the book online, you can get a deck of cards with the game, or you can use a regular deck of cards, but then you have to download some sheets to tell you what you're drawing when you draw it. Basically, each of the 4 suits of the deck of cards represent a month, a season. Players will alternate taking turns. On your turn, you discover something new, and you draw it on the map. Then you can hold a discussion, or you can start a project. And again, there will be various dice that you can use. So each week, the active player will draw a card from the top of the deck. For example, it might be this one here, which says, in spring, a young boy starts digging in the ground and discovers something unexpected. What is it? Or an old man confesses to past crimes and atrocities. What has he done? And from that you choose one of the 2, and then you resolve it, you tell the narrative. And then what's interesting with this is the dice mechanic. You don't roll the dice as such. What you do is you place dice onto a project when you're doing a project that you've drawn on the table. So for example, you build a well, and between you discuss that, and you decide it's going to take 3 weeks to build. So you take your D6 and you put it on there on the number 3, and then after each week, which is each person's turn, that'll roll down by 1, and then after the 3rd week it'll be completed, and then it'll be available within the story. Then in winter there is this one card here which simply says the frost shepherds arrive, the game is over. And at that point, regardless of where you are in the story, the game simply ends. And of course the best thing of all is at the end of the game, because each time you're drawing, each turn you're drawing something that happens on this kind of cartography style map. So at the end of the game, what you're left with is this bizarre map of all kinds of drawings and illustrations to describe your adventure. And one thing we did at the same time as drawing those was we took some notes of various characters that were introduced to the game, various things that we built, so we knew what they were, so we could refer back to them at a later point if we wanted to. There's one other thing called contempt, which is that if you don't agree, when it's your turn, if you decide something, it happens basically. Nobody can disagree with you. But one thing that can happen is somebody can take contempt, and that's like a token that they can then use later just to say, aha, I told you so. So if they don't agree with you, they can take that just to show they didn't agree with the decision that was made. Very interesting game, lots of storytelling going on, fun to see the results at the end of the game and see where it went. Anyway, that's what I had to tell you about. No talking about Pathfinder particularly, or Dungeons and Dragons and the core role-playing, some slightly off-piste role-playing games. 2 of them are GM-less, 2 of them are can be played in a single session, and then Fate using the fudge dice and the very different way of building a character. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye. For a long time we were at war with the jackals. Now, finally, we've driven them off. And we're left with this, a year of relative peace. One quiet year, with which to build our community up and learn again how to work together. Come winter, the frost shepherds will arrive, and we might not survive the encounter. This is when the game will end. But we don't know about that yet. What we know is that right now, in this moment, there is an opportunity to build something.